Hi everyone, good morning. This is Ida of Created to Create. Welcome back to my channel. If you are not 18 years or older, this video content is not intended for you. For those of you who are in the Griffinite swap, I did a tutorial on the envelope that I wanted, the accordion box that I wanted you to create for that swap. And even though I was doing the right thing on video, I was thinking one thing and doing it, but what was coming out of my mouth was not exactly what I was doing. So I was giving you the wrong measurement. So I'm having to redo this to avoid all that confusion. I'm just going to go ahead and record another one. That way you guys have everything straight. What we are creating is the envelope box for the swap. And this is what I created. And mine does have a magnetic closure, and it has 4 compartments on the inside to put your swap in. And I'm not going to go too much into the swap details, but this will measure, when everything's said and done, this will measure 7.5 inches across and 5 3/4 tall. But the inside part, the accordion part, those will only be 5.5 tall, to give yourself that little gap. You see that little gap? So if you're putting something that's just a little bit taller, you'll be able to get it in here without crushing it. So this one was the one that we made for during the first tutorial. So you can, as you can see, one is a little taller than the other one. Let me hold it closed the way it's supposed to and line them up. As you can see, one is just 1/4 of an inch taller than the other one, and that's what we're going to create right now. So hopefully I will give you the correct measurements. You are going to need, and you can do all this with 8.5 by 11 sheets. You're going to need one sheet, and you're going to trim it down on the 8.5 inch side. You're going to trim it down to 7.5, but you're going to leave it 11 inches long. So you're not going to cut nothing in the length, just in the width. You're going to do it 7.5 inches. And then you're going to need another piece that is going to measure, again, you're going to trim down a piece, but first you're going to cut it into 6 3/4 inches. And then you're going to trim off that little bit on the 8.5 inch side. You're going to trim it down to 7.5. So it's 6 3/4 by 7.5. The first piece is 7.5 inches wide by 11 inches. So I didn't score anything. I didn't do anything because I'm going to do it with you guys. All I did was cut it out. So you're going to take your first piece, which is 7.5 by 11, and you're going to score it at 1 inch. You're going to score it at 1 inch, and then you're going to score it at 6 3/4. So I'm going to score it at 6 3/4, and then you're going to score it at 7 3/4. And I'm going to tell you what this is. The first inch is the bottom of the box. The bigger portion is the back of the box. And then the next inch is the top of the box. And then the last piece you have left, which is, I'll tell you right now, 1, 2, 3, it's 3 1/4 inches. It is your flap. So that's all we're going to do to this one. Your next piece that you cut down to 6 3/4 by 7.5 inches, you're going to turn it on the 6 3/4 side, and you're going to score at 1 inch. That's the only thing you're going to do there. So I'm going to move my scoreboard, and we're going to put this portion together. And all you're going to have to do is put those two pieces together. We're going to burnish at the score mark. And then you don't have to really burnish it because it's going to overlap. And then we're going to fold the rest of the score marks on the bigger portion of it. And the only thing we have to do here is we're going to add glue to the inside of the flap on the smaller piece. and the 1 inch that's on the longer piece is going to be glued on top of that, on the inside. The reason for that is that, I'll show you. The reason for that is that when you, if I was to put the bigger portion, the bottom flap on top, you would be able to see the edge of the paper where we trimmed it right here. By doing it the way I'm doing, you don't see a seam right here. It's just folded. The seam is actually on the back. Even though it's not that noticeable, you do want your work to be as clean as possible. So we're going to add glue to the inside of the shorter piece. I recommend that you use glue, but if you're one of those people that like to use tape, you do you. This is just a fun swap where I hope we all can have fun and for it to be really enjoyable. So I'm taking the bigger portion, the 1 inch portion, and I'm going to glue it right below the score mark that is on my back piece. And make sure you are as straight as possible. You don't want to glue it right on top of your score mark, because then it's not going to fold correctly. So it's just right below the score mark. And because of the color of the paper that I'm using, you can't really see it, but it is right below the score mark. So this creates our cover for our accordion part. When you do this, you can decorate yours any way you want, but remember, this is an Anna Griffin swap. So I'm still going to add to mine, but I don't know yet what I'm going to do. So I wouldn't do anything here because it's beautiful already there, and this is, to me, is considered, you know, the back of an envelope, you know, for lack of a better word. And this would actually be the front. So if I wanted to add a pretty decorative frame here, I could do that. You guys can decorate it. I'm just showing you the basics of what I want you to do. Okay, for the next step, you're going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 pieces that measure 8.5 inches at the longest point by 5.5 inches. So you're going to take an 8.5 by 11 sheet and you're going to cut it down to, instead of 8.5 by 11, you're going to cut it down to be 5.5 by 8.5. So you're going to cut that sheet of paper in half, and that's going to give you 2 5.5 inch pieces by 8 inches long. What we're going to do to these is we're going to score them. Let me cover my glue before we have difficulties. You're going to score all of them at, make sure I only have one. You're going to score your paper at 7.5. And the reason I'm doing it this way, because it's easier to score on the opposite end than the shorter end. So just kind of to make it easier for us. At 7.5, at 7 3/4, and at 8. Now, this is one thing you can do. You can either trim 1/4 of an inch off, or you can leave it. I'm going to leave it, but I'm going to glue it down. So I have a score mark at 7.5, 7 3/4, and 8. That is my gusset. And I'm going to do that to all 5 sheets. So again, 7.5, 7 3/4, and 8. Repeat that on all 5 pieces. This is really, really simple to make. Anybody can do it, but by looking at my first video, you wouldn't have been able to tell that anybody could do it, because what I was doing and what was coming out of my mouth were 2 different things. So there's that one, and one more. Again, 7.5, 7 3/4, and 8. Now, before I put my scoreboard away, you're going to need 3 strips that measure 5.5 inches long, but only an inch wide. We're going to score these as well at every 1/4 of an inch. So you're going to score at a 1/4 of an inch. You're going to score at a 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch, and 3/4 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch on all 3 pieces. So it's just easier for me to go the opposite way because I have fat fingers and it's harder for me to start it off at the 1/4 of an inch, but it's a 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch, and 3/4 of an inch on all 3 pieces. Let me tell you, I was all over the place. I can see why you guys were confused. Although, always check the description box below under my videos, guys, because when I make mistakes like that, especially for something like this, I will actually give you the correct measurements in the description box. So they are in the description box below. So we're done with the scoreboard. Let me put that away. And we're going to put this together. So, to create the first pocket, we're going to fold in at the very first score mark. For this, I am going to use my bone folder. And then we're going to go out on the next score line. And this is pretty thick paper. I recommend you use thick paper. This is that paper from Michael's, that 110-pound paper. And on the last portion, which is the longer piece, you're going to turn it in towards inside towards the longer section. You're going to do that to all the pieces. We're going to go in with the first score mark. We're going to fold out on the next score mark. And we're going to fold in on the longer score mark. So always remember this longer piece, if you didn't cut it off to a 1/4 of an inch, has to be facing in. Even if you cut it off, it's got to be facing in. So there's 2. And like I said, I think this is a very easy swap, you guys, because the only thing that we really have to create is this envelope. And unless you want to create embellishments, I was working on some this morning before I went to the doctor. I actually had a doctor appointment this morning with my cancer doctor, and everything is good, you guys. Everything looks really good. So I'm so grateful to the Lord, because I know it could have been a whole lot worse, but God was merciful. So I got a good report today at the doctor's. And we're going to fold that bigger tab in. Do that on all 5 pieces. And when you split these up like this, you're actually going to use 3 sheets, and you're going to have a portion left. But with that one, you can use on your next one. Because remember, you have to create, you're going to be groups of 4, and you will have to create 3 of them for your partners. If you want to create one for me, it is not mandatory. You do not have to. But if you're going to create one for me, then you would create 4. So there is that. Now, to put the first one together, see how these end up being at the same spot? Well, all you got to do is rotate it, you guys. So you want to have one of the hinges to the right and one to the left. That way we can create a pocket. So we can create a pocket. I still turned it the wrong way, right? So you're going to add glue to, let me see if I can get closer to my countertop. I have stuff stacked in front of me that I'm using to cut, so sometimes I pull away from view of the camera. So all you're going to do is add glue to that 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch, whether you trimmed it off or not, and you're going to line it up. And I am seriously hoping that I gave you all the right directions or measurements this time, because I just felt like I couldn't leave that video up because it was going to cause more confusion than anything. So that's why I decided to redo it. And now we're going to add glue to the other side. And we're going to glue it together. And I hope that some of you guys are already creating yours. I know my friend Carolyn is. She's already working on hers. So there's that one. Now, the rest of the pockets, here's one pocket completed. The rest of the pockets are going to piggyback, not piggy bank, piggyback off of this main one that we just created. So in order to do that, you grab another piece. Now you see we only have one hinge here. This is where those little strips come in to play. We're going to need to add a hinge to the other side. So just as if you're doing a rosette, back and forth, folding at the score lines to attach it to our paper, to our pocket. So you're going to add glue to one side, and you're going to glue it on the side that does not have a gusset already. So just, you know, be patient and get it as straight as possible, because if we get it straight the first time, hopefully we won't have any problems like I'm having right now. It's so little, this score mark at 1/4 of an inch, that's hard to work with. But anyway, you know, you want to line it up. Just make sure it's lined up here, but also on the sides. Make sure it is lined up as good as it can be, or as good as you can make it, because that eliminates problems. So we're going to do that to all of the leftover sheets. So we're going to have 2 more after that first one we just put together, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to fold the score marks on our little strips that we made, and we're going to add them in the same way to the last 2 pieces we have left. So it's very, very simple, you guys, to put together. It's very fast. I think what will take you the longer is deciding on what you want to die cut, or how you're going to decorate the front of your envelope, of your accordion box. I felt that this would go really well with all the Anna Griffin stuff we already have, and if you can store it with that, and everything is going to look beautiful next to the rest of the beautiful Anna Griffin stuff. So again, I'm going to line up there. And for those of you who are not joining the swap, this is a great envelope to create, just to give someone some die cuts, whether they be Anna Griffin, whether they be thin dies, whatever you want to gift. This is a great way to do it. Please, please, please feel free to create this for anything you want and share it with us. Anything that I create and I share on my channel is because I'm okay with you guys creating it for whatever reason. If I didn't want anybody to do it, then I wouldn't be sharing it. Anyway, so we're going to add the last strip to the last page that doesn't have, the last pocket that doesn't have a gusset on the opposite side. So that's pretty much it as far as creating the pockets. This one looks like this little hinge was a little long, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to trim it off before I even put it together. That way I don't have any issues. Okay, so you're going to take your first pocket you created that's closed all the way around, and you're going to take this piece, and all we need to do is add glue to the hinge, to the little 1/4 inch hinge that we just added, and we're going to glue it to the back or the front of our main pocket we just created. And you're going to make sure that it lines up not only on the sides but top and bottom. And all the measurements will be in the description box below. If you watched the old video and you cut yours using the measurements that were in the description box below that video, that was correct, but I am going to delete that video after I upload this one. I just want to grab the measurements from there. and you line it up. And that's all we're doing. And we're going to do that for all the pockets. Now, I am going to do a tutorial on making a slimline one, give you the measurements for that. I'm going to do all the work. So in case you guys want to do the slimline dies, they will fit in a nice holder, and where when whoever receives it, stores it, everything will look the same. Now, if you're doing like a house die cut, the slimline house, make sure to do all the pieces to that. I will consider that a frame die because that pretty much does take up the whole front of a card. So if that's what you want to do, or your decorative frames that are slimline. And I'm going to make the other one a little bit longer. That way it houses, if you want to add some embossed panels in there, or, you know. And then when the recipient gets it, like this one, everything's going to be nice, and it's going to coordinate very well with your Anna Griffin boxes that you have already accumulated. There's the next one. See, we have 3 pockets there. One more to go. And I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to add this to the other side because I feel like it's stronger, because it was 2 whole panels put together. I don't know. Probably not, but that's how I feel. So we're going to add this again in the same way. We're going to line it up. Make sure everything lines up. And press it together. This is like very, very simple. It took me a long time to come up with what I wanted to create for this. But when I figured it out, it is not a difficult project. It was coming up with the idea that took longer than what it takes to create this. And anybody can do it. You guys can do it. I know you can. And there is the last one. There's the last one. So that wasn't very hard, was it? I am not going to put mine together. I'm going to show you what I did, but I'm not going to put it together on camera because I don't want to be rushing, and I don't want you to rush. But for the sake of the video, I'm just going to explain the last portion. You're going to take your accordion portion that you created, and you're going to put it inside the sleeve you created. But before you do that, go ahead and add your decorative paper, your magnetic closure, if you're going to do that before you add your decorative paper. But this way you can lay it flat and add your paper to it, and you don't have nothing that's inside making it difficult. This way you can use your bone folder, you can do whatever you want, and let this be pretty much close to the last thing you do other than your frame or words or whatever. You could even finish all that up if you wanted to. But then what you're going to do with this, you're just going to put it in between, and see how it's a little lower. And that's the idea. You want to have 1/4 of an inch higher on your cover than on the insert, on the accordion insert. And all you're going to do is make sure that it's lined up side to side and that it's touching the bottom. Because by touching the bottom, nothing will drop out. Even though the frame dies won't drop out, but let's say you put something small in there, it's going to keep anything from falling out if you have it all the way to the bottom, or creating other problems, like maybe one of your die cuts slipping underneath that and getting creased or anything. So make sure it's touching the bottom. Once you have it situated the way you want it, it's flush, just go ahead and pick up the front tab, hold your accordion portion with your other hand. That will see how I'm holding it right here so it doesn't move out of place. I would add glue around this whole thing, especially the edges, and then, you know, some in the middle. And all I would do would be to fold this over and let go of the accordion so it would touch, and making sure that I kept it straight on either side and that it's flush at the bottom. After that is glued, I would hold it, I would flip it on the other side and hold it in place. Add glue to the perimeter and in the center, and then I would flip this over very carefully, making sure that it's touching the inside bottom of the holder. And you still have a little time to make sure to kind of adjust it if you don't press on it. Hold it where you want it, set it down. You will need to put your hand inside the last pocket and just kind of smooth it into place, making sure that the glue made really good contact with the cover that we created. And you're going to do that on the top and the back, the front and the back. So make sure it's glued completely. And then everything else, you're just going to decorate. If you're going to add a decorative edge, you can. Mine has a decorative edge that I used. You can use a border die, anything you want to do, guys. I'm not going to tell you how to do that. Whatever you want to do, just make sure that it does stay closed. That way, when the recipient gets it, if they happen to drop it, you know, when we go through stuff and we drop things and nothing spills out, because it will have a magnet or a Velcro or a ribbon or an elastic, whatever you decide to do. That is totally up to you. But anyway, see how fast I created yet another one. So if I have to step in as an angel, or like right now I'm working on some Happy Mail and I want to send die cuts, now I have 3 boxes already. So if I was in the swap and I was sending this would be all the boxes for my group members, because there's 4 in the group. I wouldn't create one for myself, only if I wanted to, but I probably wouldn't. I would create for my 3 partners. Now, if I wanted to create one for the hostess, which would be me, I'm going to be shameless and say I would love it. I love die cuts. And then I would create one more, and I would send off the 4. And that way the hostess would not have to open the other packages. Those would stay the way you sent them. And she could open hers. Also, I ask that when you create this, put it into some kind of plastic pocket or something, just to protect everything. Make sure you do add your social media. If you have any social media, your name, not real detailed information, none of your personal information, just your name, the swap name, and if you have YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, whatever social media you want to share with your swap partners, do that. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I hope that this was a little bit more clear, and I want you guys to have fun doing this. I want to put fun back into swapping. Thanks for watching. I hope everyone has a great day, and God bless. Bye.